Hello, welcome to the Q, another edition of Combat Theater. And just like I said in the fan mail video, we're going to do a G40 game, but this one has a slight twist. And the twist is, it is the YG, Young Grasshopper's tournament rules for his tournament coming up in 2022. So the setup for G40, his version in Europe, all the same. Nothing changes. Japan, China, Russia, US, no changes. The change, not to units, but to territories, is that ANZAC is now combined with UK Pacific for one nation. So we are going to flip all these to make them the UK Pacific roundel. And then we're going to change out our units here to make them ANZAC. So the ANZAC pieces will run that whole country. So let me go ahead and do that, and we'll look at some of the other changes. Alright, so all the British units have been replaced with ANZAC, and that will become our new nation, which is UK Pacific. So that is the major change of this version, along with a change in turn order. So typically, Germany would go first, which hasn't changed, but then it would be Russia, and then Japan. Well, they've inserted UK Pacific to go ahead of the others. And really this is a change as well, because US usually would be in there. So you've got a mix-up of the two British nations. Italy's moved up, and Russia is moved down. And the gist of that is, excuse me, the gist of that is to get the can openers eliminated. Because, Italy can do a lot of can openers in Russia. And then on the German side, the U.S. can do can openers for Britain. So, but that doesn't happen as much as the Italian can openers in Russia. So that's being removed there by this change of order. I think the other thing mentioned, and you can find this rule set in axisandallies.org, and you go to Grasshopper. Young Grasshopper has a section, and it has his tournament rules, and it has the dates, and I think it actually has a listing of who's actually coming. Turn order, UK Pacific, which is combined 17 of the UK Pacific in out of box with the 10 ANZAC, so that gives them 27. No other income has been changed, and really it's not changed, it's just combined. But some of the other interesting aspects here, and let's go up a little and zoom in. Alright, so some of the changes here is there's a minor factory in Calcutta now. And it's like the U.S. minor factory. When UK Pacific goes to war with Japan, then it automatically upgrades to a major. So we're going to leave it like that as a reminder. Japan, UK Pacific cannot declare war on Japan until the beginning of UK Pacic's third turn. So unless Japan attacks them, they are pretty much sitting idle, other than anything that they might do in Africa, I guess. They can move around and occupy stuff. And speaking of occupying, a new change is the Dutch islands. And I've got yellow chips marking those, so that you can see that they are now off limits to the Allies as far as collecting income, until Japan takes it, and then the Allies take it back, then they can collect income. So until then, it's just like free French territories. I guess they're not free French, but the French territories in Africa. You just can't walk on and claim the income until they're actually occupied by Axis countries. And then you go from there. You can get it into the Allies once they liberate them. Alright, so what other changes is there here? I've got the Japan attack rule, the declaration of war rule. the factory, these are off limits now. They can still land on them, and probably on the first turn I'll still do the Java with the Australian transport, because when that war with Japan, if UK Pacific has any units on any of the Dutch islands, then it's a 5 IPC national objective. So that's going to be, you know, for at least one of these islands, you know, they have to be on to claim that. So we'll set that up, you know, on turn 1, even though we're not going to collect that money until they're at war. So let me look down. All right, so I've got here the turn tracker, the US marker is the turn tracker, because this is an 8-turn game. And why is that? I think for the tournament rules, they want to see how many victory tokens or points, or let me see how he describes that. It is victory objectives. And it says and tokens, but I don't know what the tokens would be. So anyway, there are 10 Axis victory objectives and 10 Allied victory objectives. So at the end of turn 8, whoever has the most objectives wins. Now there is the final Allied objective, I'll go down to that, it's called attrition. And it says the score is tied at the end of 8 rounds, then the Allies win by attrition. So the Axis have to be ahead at the end of 8 to win. Let me go through some of their objectives. And some of them are obvious, and also victory conditions in the out of box. If the Axis controls London, Sydney, Moscow, if they control all 18 China territories, in Europe there are 7 victory cities. That's an out of box victory for Global 40. In the Pacific, the Axis must control all 8 United States islands, and that might be a little tough to do unless the U.S. is going 100%, you know, Europe. Africa, they must control from Morocco to Egypt, which is Cairo. Asia, they must control Calcutta, Malaya, Hong Kong, and Shanghai. And then there's an Axis victory for America if they control San Francisco or Washington. That's a rare game that might happen. And then the final victory condition is economy. And the Axis, all 3 Axis have a combined income of 144 IPCs on the income tracker, so it doesn't count national objectives. The Allied victory conditions, Berlin, Tokyo, Rome, China as well, if the Allies control all 18 Chinese territories. In Europe, they have to liberate Paris. In the Pacific, control all 8 Japanese islands in the Pacific. And that one would be tough to do as well, but certainly not off the realm of possibility. Africa, they control all non-neutral territories, so that means there's no Axis territories left in Africa. Asia, they would also control Calcutta, Malaya, Hong Kong, and Shanghai. So that kind of makes Shanghai a pretty important territory in this game for Japan. Diplomacy. The Allies control all pro-Allied neutral territories on the board. We'll see. And then, like I said, the last one is attrition. And if the victory tokens are tied at the end of 8 rounds, then it's an Allied victory. All the national objectives remain the same, with the exception of UK, Europe, and UK Pacific. They have changed those objectives, and I am scrolling to that. Alright, so UK, Europe, the Mediterranean theater, no Italian warships in the Med, 3 IPCs. European theater, if there's at least one UK-Europe land unit in an originally controlled French territory, that's another 3 IPCs. British colonies. United Kingdom controls all their original territories in Africa. 3 IPCs. And then British Commonwealth. United Kingdom controls all of their original territories outside of Africa. So I kind of like that split up because, you know, out of box, it was a 5 IPC if Britain had all their territories. Well, the second they lost Cyprus or Malta or Gibraltar or, you know, one of those islands in the Med, you know, that they can't, hard to get back, you know, in a good access game, then they would lose that objective. So here they've got 2 opportunities at that objective, you know, with Africa and then, you know, all the other ones. So the UK Pacific, they have Hong Kong. They would have 5 IPCs for Hong Kong. Malaya, 5 IPCs. Shanghai, 5 IPCs. And the outer perimeter, which is if the UK Pacific has 1 land unit on any controlled Dutch territory. So, and all those must be at war with Japan. So while I'm saying that, the declaration of war at the beginning of turn 3. So UK Pacific probably would want to do that because then they could easily collect 15 in national objectives. Now, that means Japan could attack them on turn 3 and not incur the wrath of the United States. The United States will come in at the end of their turn on turn 3. So they can't actually attack until turn 4. So that Britain could get a little jump on that, but honestly they could do that at the beginning of turn 4 and still get that 15 IPCs. So most likely you would just wait until turn 4. U.S. is already in the war. Japan may or may declare, well, if they declare war on you on turn 3, then the U.S. can move. So there's some sticky political situations there. So I think those are the changes for the rules. I'll go over them again real quick. UK Pacific, the turn order is laid out here, is different than out of box. There's a declaration of war not until turn 3 for UK Pacific on Japan. They have a minor, so they can only produce 3 units there until at war with Japan. And that's kind of the gist of the restrictions and new rules for UK Pacific. They still have the Anzac factory and all those units, so they're all combined with a combined income of 27. And we're going to, like I said, it's an 8-turn game, so we'll go through that. And let me pull this off and I'll describe how I'm going to do this turn. Alright, so probably what I will do is I will make all my moves and attacks for Germany. And then we'll come back at the beginning of the UK Pacific turn and we'll do a recap of everything that happened in that prior turn. So this first recap will just be Germany's moves. And then turn 2 will be a recap of everybody else's move and Germany's move. And then we'll show you UK Pacific's turn so you can kind of see how that might play differently. So I've got lined up here all the purchases for all the countries for the turn 1. And like I said, I've said in other videos, these later countries may change their purchase as it gets to their turn based off anything that might happen on the game board. But basically I've got set up what I think probably should happen on turn 1 anyway. We'll see. I'm not sure how to do the UK Pacific, but it's a learning process. Everything else pretty much is going to be a standard out-of-box Global 40 game there, with the exception of those victory conditions. So we'll see how those play out in affecting maneuvers and the game. So let me do Germany's turn, and then we'll come right back with UK Pacific. So let's go back to the German turn. In the C zone, it was basic attacks, no scramble by Britain, as I'm contemplating the Toronto move. Plus, Germany did buy another transport, so you always kind of wonder about your home country. So the ships that were there did get 2 hits in each battle, so that kind of stinks for Germany losing a plane. But it is what it is. They made up for it here off Canada. They got they got 1 hit on that first round, and Britain didn't get a hit back. Here's your losses in Paris. What is that? 7 infantry and a mech. The only thing I did kind of different, instead of hitting Normandy, which I normally do, I went down here with a tank and then the 3 mechanized to get southern France, because I wanted to get that factory going on turn 2 in the Med. I did lose a mech on that, so fortunately on that first roll the tank hit and one of the mechs, so that eliminated the 2 Frenchies, and then they got the 1 hit back. So overall a pretty good turn for Germany. I'm going to place their units, the 2 ships obviously going in the C zone with the other German ships. Then I've got 2 infantry and a tank going into Western Germany with all that good stuff, and the last infantry in Berlin. So that is that. We go over to the other side of the board. Oh yeah, I was going to say, in Yugoslavia I did the ping pong maneuver and lost 2 infantry but killed 3. Sometimes that backfires and you kill all 5, but it wouldn't have hurt me because I wasn't attacking Russia on turn 2. So, all right, so that leaves Germany with all of France's money, $40 plus 10 in NOs. So that's your typical German first move. All right, so let me put this on the tripod and then we'll do UK Pacific's move. All right, so down here, the basic maneuver, we're going to take this transport with 2 dudes from South Wales and land them on Java. And this fighter we're going to fly over from Queensland, so we don't get that money, so to speak, but we'll get that NO when wartime comes. And then we're going to move our ships up, the planes over, move one of the anti-aircraft guns up. So that's pretty much it for your Anzac side of the... Oh, I'm way off here. Alright, we'll zoom in a little here. Alright, so not a lot of action here. We are going to take the infantry and artillery on this transport, and we're going to slide over to Persia here. And that's going to give them 2 units. Now, in out of box, when UK Pacific comes past this line, they become British. I assume that's how that's going to be, but I'm going to put that marker there, and then I'll probably ask a question there on the chat and see to verify that, and I'll make that adjustment. And that guy's just going to walk in. So at some point we'll figure out who's going to get that $2. Right now I'm going to give it to Britain, UK, Europe, I should say. And then the rest of the movements here, we're going to bring this plane back, and I believe that's it. Oh, we don't want this battleship here. That's here. We're going to bring it back over here to Calcutta anyway. Everything else, I believe... Well, let's move these 2 guys into Shan State. And for grins, we'll move 5 up there. Since we go before Japan, we can always move them back. Alright, so that will be it. As far as the purchase, I can only place 3 here. So I'm going to place 2 infantry and 1 artillery. And then I have infantry, artillery, and a fighter that I will place over here. And I got a chip instead of a dude here. Let's get a dude out on there. Alright. So that would be the end. They get no national objectives. They're not at war. So they remain with their $27 for next turn. Alright, so now I'm going to do... Alright, so now I'm going to do the rest of these turns, and then Germany, and then we'll come back at this point and I'll recap what went on. And basically this first turn for Japan is going to be basic out of the book. I mean, nothing exciting. I'm not attacking the U.S. on turn 1 or anything. So no J1. They're just going to go at China on this first turn, and then you know, Russia and U.S. is basically, you know, they're not in the war, so they won't be doing anything other than just building their forces and shuffling. Britain, I think I'm going to look at it doing the Toronto, and we'll see how that goes. So I will be back in turn 2 on UK Pacific's turn.